Okay, guys, welcome back. Today we're at USS Yorktown. This is episode 2 of our mini series for looking for spookiness in the low country or any southern area around our houses. So, what got us interested is going to be a spooky noise that we heard in our previous video. We looked up some information, and guess what? They have ghost tours here in Charleston for this exact thing. So, we're going to see if we see anything spooky, see any spirits. We're going to catch you guys on the inside.
Hatches will open and close in disparate parts of the ship. You'll hear that.
Okay. Because what
That's
we
my
heard was
experience.
like someone saying something, but we can't really hear what they're saying.
Where were you when you heard that? Do you
So
know what
we
part of the
cli-
ship you were in?
So we climbed up this ladder and then it said private area, do not enter.
It's where the Yamato is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
so-
we heard something.
My mom says I.
That's a marine area. That part of the ship was actually hit. And we'll talk about this on tour, but it was
Okay.
hit by, it was one of the few times the Yorktown was actually hit by enemy fire, and it took out a large portion of that ship. So there were casualties and injuries in that specific area too. So,
Okay. Interesting.
hey, don't worry.
So that's really good to know
Yeah.
because we were like, okay. That's something we weren't expecting to hear.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to come on a ghost
So
tour.
if you're open to it, you're going to experience a lot of things on the ship. It's hard to suspend skepticism. We're so used to analyzing every little thing that comes at us, and then trying to normalize it, right? Trying to explain it away as some natural occurrence, or
Yeah.
it's just the way your brain works when you're an adult, right?
Yeah.
That's why I like getting kids on my tour, because they
Full imaginations.
yeah,
See their
well, they
pants.
just take things
Oh.
as they come, right? They're not they're too young to be skeptical yet, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's one more thing I need to tell you, and I always wait until we're a quarter mile away from shore before I tell you this. Yeah, well, I don't mind if you get possessed, but if you get run over by a golf cart, that's a lot worse.
You're legally responsible for one versus the other.
Right, exactly, right. But yeah, most of the paranormal activity on the Yorktown today happens almost exclusively to women, and you can imagine why that's true, right? All the spirits on the ship are men, and they they're sailors at that. So you might be standing in the middle of an empty corridor. You'll feel a cool breeze blow up one side or down the other. One of the things that we get reports on all the time, people tell us this all the time. I felt like an icy cold hand reaching to take mine. This is an amorous sailor who's found that perfect gal, and he wants to take you on a tour of the ship. So don't go with that spirit. You have to stay with me the whole time. Another thing that can happen is poking and shoving. And we're pretty sure that about 60% of that are going to be playful spouses and siblings and best friends, but the other 40% is real. It does happen. It's happened on my tour, and there's nothing we can do about it. We would like to know where and when it takes place, just so we can put that information together. So right now, there's a part of the ship where it seems to happen more than any other area, and this is an area that we will be seeing tonight on this tour. Okay? Now, I can tell you the paranormal activity on the Yorktown started the day she was launched in 1943 from Newport News, Virginia. So at this christening ceremony, you guys understand christening ceremonies for ships? You take a bottle of champagne, you smash it against the bow of the ship, and this is when the ship is officially named, right? The ship has had a name through its construction, but that name can change. At that christening ceremony, it's written in steel. Okay? And christening ceremonies probably started about 1,000 years ago as something fun to do. Now it's a superstition. And if you don't do it, the ship is unlucky. You're going to have a hard time getting sailors to work on board. All kinds of terrible things can happen. So the christening ceremony is very important. And Eleanor Roosevelt, the first lady at the time, was slated to christen the ship. She didn't want to do it. Eleanor Roosevelt had christened the first Yorktown aircraft carrier. This is the second carrier to bear that name. The first one is the USS Yorktown CV-5, and that one was struck by an enemy torpedo at the Battle of Midway and sunk. And Eleanor Roosevelt, having christened that one and knowing how superstitious sailors could be, she didn't want to jinx this one, but she gets talked into it by the Secretary of the Navy. So there she is at that christening ceremony. She's listening to a speech by Admiral Buckmaster, who's the first captain of the Yorktown CV-5, when 7 minutes ahead of time. And for no reason we can think of today, this ship launches herself, all by herself. And it's a huge mystery as to how that could happen. That should never happen. This ship was weighing in at the time 28,000 tons, and here she is barreling out of the gates. And the way they launch ships at Newport News is backwards, right? So the Yorktown is sliding stern first into the water, which means Eleanor Roosevelt is running out of bow to christen this ship pretty quick. So she jumps up, runs over this bottle of champagne. It's hanging off a lanyard attached to a pole. And as the Yorktown is sliding past, she just hurls this bottle of champagne at the side of the ship. It bounces off. So she has to wrangle this thing around, and this time with all her might. And seconds to spare, she takes this bottle of champagne, she slings it tetherball style into the side of the ship. It smashes against the hull, once and for all christening the USS Yorktown CV-10, herself, Admiral Buckmaster and his wife, and a bunch of press that were on the dais that day. And ever since then, the paranormal activity on the ship has just stacked up. So with that, welcome to the Yorktown. Right this way, guys.
Spookadooka.
I'm gonna get pushed, I know it.
She might.
Now, so you got me in frame here?
Yeah.
If these people are charging you to watch this video, that's a federal violation, and you should report them immediately to the FBI.
We're not. I promise.
Have to do that. Copyright. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. When we came into the Yorktown, that first left we took, we went through something called a battle dressing station. It kind of makes sense on a ship this big, especially a warship, that you have small, well-equipped, well-staffed medical areas spread throughout the ship. In this way, an injured sailor could get medical attention almost immediately. And in battle, the main medical area of this ship, or what we call sick bay, is closed. It's not only closed, it's sealed. It's watertight and fireproof. The idea being you were going to need the resources in that area after the battle, and your medical professionals, and you might have injured already in there that need to be protected as well. So the battle dressing stations really had to do some pretty heavy lifting. You could do surgery in a battle dressing station. And those battle dressing stations are customized a little bit to the part of the ship they were in. So you could expect certain injuries to occur back there that you wouldn't get so much of in another part of the ship. For instance, that battle dressing station is very close to the machine shop. You're using large industrial machines and tools in there to create spare parts for the Yorktown and other things that might be necessary. So your injuries coming through there were likely to be things like amputations, crush injuries, pinch injuries, punctures, that sort of thing. The part of the ship where we get that physical paranormal activity, the poking and the shoving, is very close to a battle dressing station that dealt with burn victims, which to my mind is the severest of human traumas. Certainly a very intense outpouring of human emotional energy in this area. We don't know if that's why that area is so physically paranormally active. It's a theory we have. We're going to kind of follow it around and see where it goes. And then you met my mannequins. We have a lot of mannequins on the ship. And for whatever reason, they're always right around the corner, peering at you from some display window. So try not to let that freak you out too much. I did tell a group of campers one night, we used to offer ghost tours to the campers. They could get their overnight program and then tack on a ghost tour if they wanted to. We thought it was a fantastic idea. Turns out to be the worst idea we've probably ever had. I told a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds one night that late at night, the mannequins climb down off their mounts and go roaming the passageways of the Yorktown. Apparently some kids had to spend a night in a hotel room because they could not stay on the Yorktown. Got emails about that. I see it as a win myself. But you can imagine also how important food is on the Yorktown. The Yorktown served 4 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a late meal called midnight rations, or mid-rats for short. And that's served to anybody who's working late, or really anybody who's still hungry from the day. And the Yorktown won awards for having the best food of any ship in the Navy several years in a row. Now, I hate making generalizations about whole groups of people, but I feel very comfortable in saying that sailors love sweets, ice cream especially. It's amazing. I mean, these guys can't get enough ice cream. The Yorktown had vast stores of ice cream. In World War II, the Navy actually owned 3 barges, massive concrete barges, and all they did was make ice cream. Over 500 gallons a day each, and they just towed these things wherever they were needed to get all this ice cream. The sweet treat on board the Yorktown was a chocolate chip cookie. And given the awards that the Yorktown had earned, this is arguably the finest chocolate chip cookie the Navy can make. And the Yorktown made 10,000 chocolate chip cookies every day. So right this You're going to find pretty quick that I over-anthropomorphize this ship. I believe she's female, that she has memories and moods, and you know what mother wouldn't rejoice, having her sons back home. Right? So that's what's, that's why the Yorktown was all stirred up. And I'll give you an example. Patriots Point pipes in these simulated ship sounds to make your experience more immersive. Why anybody thought the sounds of men washing dishes was going to enhance your experience out here, I don't know. But that's what that is. And those sound effects are all on a timer that shuts off at 6. The Yorktown will activate these sound effects at random, whenever she feels like it. To me, it's the way the Yorktown talks to us. And the only voice she has, really, the audible component of her exhibits. So, that's kind of another evidence of her being active tonight. Now, I do really, invite you to ask questions on this tour. We're real proud of the amount of information that we've learned and the research that we've done, not only on the haunted history of the Yorktown, but the general history as well. We've had over the years a lot of people coming from different angles, electricians and engineers and architects and even healthcare professionals, and they all had their own questions about the Yorktown. So we ended up learning a lot more about this ship than we ever thought we would. So your questions are greatly appreciated, and no question is trivial. Okay, and I'll give you an example of that. A question I think I should be asked a lot more than I am is, what's the 10 stand for? I saw the big 10 painted on the side of her as you were walking down. This is the 10th aircraft carrier built for the United States Navy. That's what that 10 means. Okay, so, and if you're not in the Navy, you wouldn't know that. Now we're going to go up our first ladder tonight. They do spend some amount of time in the Navy teaching you how to go up and down these ladders. We don't have that kind of time. So just be careful. Use both hands when you can. Watch your step. Okay, there's a step up over the hatch at the top of the ladder, so be careful with that.
Be careful.
The campers?
Yeah. Do the campers
In
stay
rooms
right
like
here?
this, yeah.
Oh, in rooms.
Yeah, so they'll have, they're staying in actual berthing areas, and they'll be 3 and 4 high in some of those areas. So the women get a little better accommodations, like they get like regular twin beds, and they're closer to the bathrooms, a little more privacy for them. But yeah, the boys will stay in something like this.
Okay.
So come on in. Please feel free to spread out. We've got plenty of room. You don't have to see me to hear me in this room. So this is crew berthing. I guess I was surprised to find that for the crew of 3,000 on this ship, the average age of a sailor on the ship is 19 years old. You can enlist at 17, and you still can. But back then, if you were a big 15, 16-year-old, it was pretty easy to lie your way in. It's forged signatures on paperwork. Nobody had a picture ID. The youngest kid in the Navy in World War II was 12. This kid's name was Calvin Graham. If you get it, research this. Calvin Graham had a very interesting life. This kid was kicked out of the Navy at 13. He was married at 14. He was a father at 15. Divorced at 17. Now he's single and eligible for the draft, so he goes into the Marines, having been kicked out of the Navy. But something that surprised me, I think, even more than all of that is the fact that most of the kids on the ship had never seen the ocean a day before in their lives. They're coming from rural farming communities in the Midwest. Everything was an unknown. Consequently, when you boarded the Yorktown, you were surrounded by as many brothers as you could possibly want, all united in their fear of the unknown, their anxiousness to get into the fight, their excitement for the adventure. The captain would have been your father figure, right? He was the most experienced sailor and pilot on the ship. He rewarded you, he disciplined you. But when we read transcripts of men who served on the ship, when we listen to their audio, we watch their video, one thing they say again and again is the Yorktown was their mother. In fact, what they say is they loved the Yorktown like she was their mother. And when you think about it, the ship fed them, it clothed them, rocked them to sleep at night, gave them chocolate chip cookies when they were good boys. Everything you would want a mom. And it's our belief that when some of these men died, the ones who found the most fellowship, the most purpose, the most joy in life on the ship were the ones that she brought back. Because for these men, the Yorktown was everything heaven should be. And this is where they always wanted to be. That's one of the reasons why the Yorktown is haunted. It's a mother embracing her sons through eternity and sharing with us their memories. It's again, footsteps that echo down empty passageways. It's shadows that pass by open hatches. And hatches opening and closing, which we'll hear tonight on the story. Okay. There are other reasons that she's haunted. We'll talk about that too. Now, we're going to make our way around the room here. Most of the areas, all of the areas that we go on tonight have been investigated. Not only by us, but by people like the ghost hunters. I think they call themselves ghost adventurers now. BuzzFeed Unsolved has been out here as well. And these areas have proven to be paranormally active to some lesser, greater extent or another. The investigation we had back in that room was done, this is a few years ago. We were doing these one-off investigations where we come out here at midnight, wouldn't leave till 5 in the morning. People would bring suitcases full of equipment. And the thing they were using back in that room was something called a spirit box. You guys know what this is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so if you don't know, a spirit box is it's a radio scanner. It only scans empty frequencies, right? So when you turn it on, all you hear is static, and you might hear a pop as it scans up or down. And the idea is you hear voices in the static in response to some question that you've asked. You would go in there and you would say something like, if there's anybody in here that wants to talk to us tonight, you can do it on this radio. What's your name? How old are you? What did you do on board the ship? And they weren't getting anything. So they decide they're going to taunt the spirits in that room. They're going to poke the ghosts by playing a recording of a woman named Tokyo Rose. Now, not a lot of people know who Tokyo Rose is anymore, but Japan had a radio station that broadcast a very powerful signal that this ship could pick up. And the men would listen to it because it plays all the most popular music of the day. But every day there was a segment with this sweet voiced young lady named Tokyo Rose, who was actually a series of young women, Japanese, educated in America. Most of them could speak English fairly well. And her job was to demoralize the fighting sailor, make them sad, make them want to come home, by saying, wild stuff like, the Japanese Navy has just captured New York City. Your mothers and daughters and sisters and wives are all working for us now.
Carriers are making you do. This morning they are forcing you to attempt the impossible.
Is that Tokyo Rose?
Brothers?
Yeah, I guess so.
The impossible.
And no accent.
For it is impossible for you to dislodge our forces on Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima? She's got the straight dope.
Well, they got a response to that. Two of the clearest words I've ever heard on a spirit box before. I don't know, do y'all watch the shows? Paranormal State, Ghost Adventures, and things like that. Inevitably, in an investigation, the spirit box goes off, somebody jumps up and says, oh my goodness, did you hear? It said this, and it never sounds like that. These two words were crystal clear, and derogatory words about this woman's heritage and parentage, and we'll just leave it at that. I've been looking for the audio file. I feel like I could probably play it. I definitely can't say it. But hairs went up on the back of everybody's neck down there. Now, before we move down this hallway, just a couple of things. The gray box you're going to pass on your left here is called a foam station. It's part of the firefighting apparatus on board the Yorktown. You would fill tanks like that with seawater and a chemical foaming agent, And then these would tie into the sprinkler system and other firefighting stations on the ship. You never put a fire out on the Yorktown with water. All your fires on the ship are going to be oil or gas or grease or something else that wouldn't react very well. You put a bunch of water on it, right? So it's always going to be this. And it still is. It's called aqueous film forming foam, AFFF. They still use it today. The chemical has changed a little bit. It's still not good for you, but it does put fires out in a really, really quick way. Now the room over here, we're not going in this room, but you're welcome to poke your head in here as we go by. It's a really long room. It stretches from the bulkhead behind you to the bulkhead in front of you and contains all the equipment necessary to raise and lower one elevator on the ship. It's a really big elevator though. See, I'm deathly afraid I'm going to be coming through here one night like this guy. He's going to be sitting up on. Really? I've had nightmares about that. I woke up screaming because the mannequins were moving around or something.
See, your horseplay with the kids are coming back to you.
Yes. You know, I deserve whatever karma I get. I understand that.
That's fair.
So these guys are pretty busy. The turnover was pretty quick though, and that's a good thing because these beds are all the beds you had for a crew of 3,000. These are all the hospital beds you had on the ship. But if you're injured really badly and it wasn't something they could take care of in a few minutes, you're just waiting to be transferred to a hospital ship. Because the Yorktown is no place to recover from an injury, right? I can tell you the very first casualty on board the Yorktown actually took place in this rack right here. The first man to die on the ship. His name was Ken Rafer. Ken Rafer was a pharmacist aide. So here's a kid, didn't have a lot of medical training, but he could type real well. So he could print labels, he could count pills, he could file. He died from body lice.
What?
Now, I didn't think body lice could kill you, and technically they can't. But you can scratch yourself to death, and that's what happened. Died of a horrible infection. Now look, this is something the other tour guides won't tell you. They checked on him. He was running a really, really high fever, but they had hopes for him because he's young, he's strong. Came back 2 hours later, he had just died. His groin had swollen to the size of a basketball. So if you start feeling itchy in this part of the ship, those are ghost crabs.
Ghost crabs. Dang.
It's a true story, though. Okay, so 800 men had to sleep on the flight deck while they got this infestation under control. It's horrible. They'll kick you out of the Navy for bringing lice on a ship like this. You can imagine the chaos. Yeah, just an awful thing to occur, you know. And this poor kid, I mean, they could have saved him had he come forward in time, but he didn't want to get kicked out of the Navy, or maybe he was ashamed and embarrassed about how he got it, you know. So I think they show you a movie on how not to get something like that, what to do if you do. So, but you guys follow me, we'll go this way.
Have you ever had an encounter with ghost crabs?
I'm a good boy from a good family. So this is, I never used to talk about this model, but I lost somebody back in that room with all the airplane models in it. I mean, they were just enthralled. And I get it, but we turned the corner and this person's lost for a couple of minutes. And we eventually find him, but now I rally here and just kind of check my numbers and make sure, you know, everybody's still here. And then people start asking questions. So this is the Yamato. This is the largest battleship ever constructed to this day. And she's on display here because pilots from the Yorktown's 9th Air Group, in a coordinated attack with other pilots from other ships, were able to sink her. In the end, this ship took 35 torpedoes and 19 bombs before she sank, and that's a lot. You could sink the Yorktown with a couple of torpedoes if you aimed at them. The main guns on the ship, by the way, fire 18.1-inch shells. Those are 3,000-pound projectiles, and they can fire them over 20 miles. So the model took 2,700 hours to build. Dude, tell me the guy built this either single when he started or single when he finished, right? Okay, we're going to go around the corner here. All right, so this is marine berthing. And again, this is the area in this part of the ship that was damaged severely from a bomb hit in 1945. We usually get some paranormal activity in this area because this is the first wound that the Yorktown received. This is the first injury that she incurred. You can still see the scar if you know where to look on the outside of her. But 1945, a 500-pound bomb was dropped on the Yorktown. It's the only time the ship was hit by an enemy bomb. That bomb would hit gun turret number 7, which is 2 decks above us, but pretty much like right here. Bounce off of that and detonate 30 feet off the side of the ship. That's the side of the ship. And as it detonated, it instantly killed 2 men and mortally wounded a third. As the bomb bounced off of gun turret number 7, in the blink of an eye, it amputated the legs of the 2 Marines on that gun turret. One of those Marines died shortly after they got him to sick bay. The other Marine, a fellow named Powell Barnett, is still alive when corpsmen get to him. So they put tourniquets around his legs, and they were trying to carry him down off of this gun turret, but Powell Barnett was physically stopping him. He's hanging on to the railings, and he's yelling at him, "Leave me alone, go away, save the Yorktown. Come back and get me when she's out of danger. My wounds aren't that bad." And all reports say that these are his amazingly heroic words. So they leave him. By the time they come back to get him, there are so few corpsmen left to pull him down off of this gun turret that Powell Barnett has to hold his own bottle of blood plasma high over his head. And now they're dragging him through the hangar bays, which are covered in saltwater foam with fire suppression on the ship. And after all of that, they would get this guy to sick bay. Powell Barnett would spend the rest of that night reassuring each and every wounded sailor that came in, it's going to be okay. These guys really know what they're doing. He'd tell the doctors and corpsmen about stories of friends, family, and home, just trying to lighten the mood in the sickbed. Unfortunately, at midnight, Powell Barnett would succumb to his injuries. And the next morning was one of 5 men buried at sea off the flight deck of the Yorktown. 5 men died from direct enemy fire on the ship. In total, the Yorktown lost 141 souls. Now, these deaths are tragically more than the loss, but the number is significant, because that's exactly how many men died on the first Yorktown aircraft carrier, to the man. Yeah, you know what's unusual about that is the really strange story behind that is the first captain of this ship, Captain Joseph Clark, was part Cherokee Indian, first Native American to graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy, and he had talked to his tribal chief and coming out and saying a blessing over the ship. And the blessing was odd. The blessing was no more harm would come to the men on this ship than had the men on her namesake. So a very prophetic blessing. The chief was asked about that. It's an odd blessing because he's blessing some amount of death, but he was led to believe that 141 losses on a ship like this was very low and acceptable, and he wanted to be practical with his blessing. So, but we're moving forward now, literally moving toward the front of the ship. The paranormal activity does tend to ramp up from here. Okay. Right this way.
What would you say is the most active part of the ship?
We are going into a very physically paranormally active part of the ship here in a little bit. We're about to go through a part of the ship that is chained off in the daytime. There are lots of areas on this ship that you wouldn't be able to see if you were to come out here. There's a bunch of stuff you can't see. You can spend hours on the ship, but some areas are reserved for staff, offices and such, and then you have areas where they might be building a new exhibit, or it's just a dangerous part of the ship you could be in. So this next little area has a room in it, room 243, that's actually used by staff for overnight stays. So if somebody works out here has to spend the night on the ship, they would spend the night in that room. Room 243 was used most by a fellow named Brian Parsons. Brian Parsons is he was somebody that we spent a lot of time with when we put this tour together, because no one has spent more time on the ship than he has, at all hours of the day and night. Brian was a Boy Scout when he spent the night on the Yorktown, fell in love with her. Every day in the summer, his mom would drive him to Patriots Point so he could volunteer. When Brian goes to college, he goes to college for electrical engineering so that he could come back and work in one of the higher paying full-time jobs out here. Now, the way that looked is that after classes on Friday, Brian would drive down to Patriots Point, finish up whatever tasks they had for him, and if it was late, he'd just stay in room 243. So Brian was telling us about his first paranormal experience out here. He said he got here kind of late one Friday. I think he had a lab or something. It wasn't until 11:30 he finished up with his tasks. He just goes to bed here. Now he's lying there. He's still awake. He feels like it's between 12:15, 12:30 when he hears this really loud noise. I won't do that again, by the way. That hurts. For you. Sacrifice.
Shut up.
That was a good one too. I hit it right in the sweet spot. So what happens is the door flies open. Brian's on his feet. It's a step and a half to the door. He looks out into the passageway. There's a chain across this hatch, a chain across that hatch. They're not swinging around. He doesn't hear footsteps. And that night it was Brian and the security guard. No overnight campers. Now Brian over the years has told us he's gotten used to a lot of the paranormal phenomena. Like us, he believes most of the spirits on the ship are spirits of heroes. Kids who dedicated their lives to this country and the ship. And they're not going to hurt us. That said, there's a part of the ship that Brian refuses to go into to this day. And that's where we're going next. Now,
Of course.
So I need to tell you what's going to happen here. And unfortunately, some of you are going to be exposed to the severe physical paranormal activity. And whether it happens or not, it depends. But the situation is there's a long, dark hallway that I can't get all of us in. Fortunately or unfortunately, at the end of this long, dark hallway is an open hatch that leads to a shorter, much darker hallway. And I need to get some of you in there so the rest of us can fit into the longer, less dark hallway, where I'm going to be. But I don't go into the shorter, darker hallway. But if you want to go there, get behind me. Yeah.
I saw that.
Oh, you saw me do that?
Yeah. Just seeing if I can. Yeah, I am.
All right.
I wanted
You
to
have a
see
cell phone?
if I could see anything.
Should I leave it up?
Use the light to get you back in. See that open hatch at the end?
Yeah. I got it.
Sure, yes, sir.
So are you going to use that light to get you back in there?
Oh, see, I don't like that. I'll be right here.
So we are gonna settle in, and then I'm gonna turn out the lights and make everything really nice
Oh,
and
you know
dark.
what? I don't like being by myself.
Yeah,
Crap.
Brian won't come in here. This is where the physical
I can't.
paranormal activity takes place, the poking and the shoving. And when we do investigations, we look at the history of the area first. And that always gives us a clue as to why that area is paranormally active. In this case, the open hatch down at the end of this corridor leads to, again, a smaller, darker hallway that has a closed hatch at the end. And in that closed hatch, there's a small porthole you can actually see on the other side. Through that closed hatch is the battle dressing station that dealt with burn victims.
Oh, so that's this area.
That's right. So, and again, very intense outpouring of human emotional energy, which can lend itself to a particular kind of haunting. So when we do investigations, we categorize our hauntings two different ways. It's either a residual haunting, which for lack of a better term is going to be the memory of the ship. It's going to be events and the emotional energy around those events that are written in the steel of the ship, almost like grooves in a record. And these events can play out for us when conditions are just right, but they're dumb events. They happen regardless of what we're doing and where we're standing. And we feel like the majority of the paranormal phenomenon that we experience in our lives is in this category. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening in here. The other category is intelligent haunting. That's where there's an entity that's aware of its own existence and can interact with us. That's The Exorcist, The Ring, Insidious, all the Conjuring movies and the Annabelle films too.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, people who study the paranormal like it was a science would call these things poltergeists. Now we did an investigation in this room where we used something called a ghost grid. And we'll talk about what that is later, but that ghost grids reveal movement. And what they caught was bizarre. Whatever this thing is, it's human shaped, it's very tall and thin, and it lives on the other side of that open hatch. Okay? and can move through here. I've got a video. You guys want to see it?
Yeah.
All right. So you're going to follow me out then.
Get me out of here.
I was by myself. Jonathan went in the scary hallway. I was by myself.
But that's where you're going to find out if they allow us to do a haunted house out here this October. They would not let us do one last October. Apparently my ideas were too radical for Patriots Point. Now this is my idea. It's a normal tour right up until this point. And then I say something like, I'll be right back. I've got to go put all the barricades back I took up for us to get here. If I don't do this, people are going to get lost when they come out here in the morning. Wait for me in here. And then I leave. And I don't come back. And all of a sudden everything goes to red emergency lighting. We've got subwoofers pounding the floors. And we've got alarms going off. Battle station, battle station. World War II sailor comes stumbling in all bloodied. If you want to live, follow me. And now you're going through a maze of mannequins and machine parts and smoke everywhere.
Sounds more
That would have
expensive.
been hilarious.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That would have been awesome.
Apparently liability or some such.
Oh.
Anyway, I'll be right back. I've got to go put all the barricades back I took for us to get here. It takes me 70 seconds. Just wait for me in here. When I get back, I'll show you the movie.
Okay. Bye.
It looks like stars in the night sky, but it's a regular pattern and it doesn't move around. And the idea is you shine it into a dark area like that where there's no physical paranormal activity, and if anything's moving around, it perturbs the light and you can see it. So they shine it down the dark hallway, and these lights are landing on the bulkhead with the open hatch. Okay, so I'll just bring it around the room so everybody can see it. Okay, right about there. It's an intelligent haunting. It has physicality.
Yeah.
It interacts with the lights. It can touch people, and it's done some freaky things. I had a young lady back there one night. She came out with 3 scratch marks on her shoulder. I actually had that happen 3 nights ago out here. So it faded over time. I mean, they weren't severe scratches. No blood was drawn. But the odd thing is it didn't feel like a scratch. It felt like
Pressure.
people always say something tingled on my shoulder. It feels deceptive, manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
When we get psychics and mediums on these tours all the time, you can imagine that we do, and we have some people like that work at Bulldog Tours, and many of them say this, and not all of them say this, but many of them say that whatever that is, it's malevolent, it's mean, it feels that way to them. The weird thing is what they all say. And they all say it just like this. And keep in mind, these people don't know each other. They don't collaborate. They all say that whatever that is, it's not original to the ship. And they just keep saying it's not original to the ship. It's not original to the ship. What they would not have known when they told us this is that several years ago, the unsubstantiated rumor is some kids who volunteered out here took a Ouija board back there. So we don't use Ouija boards, right?
No.
No, Ouija boards. You have to have a very special mindset and just a really solid foundation in faith to be able to use a Ouija board, because what you're doing is you're inviting a spirit to possess you enough to move your hand around the board, and that's a foot in the door. That's a crack. We use dowsing rods. You guys know these? Mm-hmm. Dowsing rods? Yeah, we use dowsing rods to contact the spirit, to communicate with the spirits. Closed for yes, open for no, is how we set that up usually. So.
What about pendulums?
We use pendulums too. Yep.
I don't trust pendulums.
Pendulums are a little wonky, especially in the dark. You know, we're back in parts of the ship that haven't seen maintenance since the 70s. We've had some success with them, but dowsing rods are a little easier to use, I think, for everybody. Like the Ghost Hunters or BuzzFeed Unsolved. You know, again, these guys have been out here. The Ghost Hunters used infrared cameras back here to capture human-shaped forms moving around. All I know is that have you ever seen The Shining?
Yes.
Okay, remember the last scene in The Shining? When Jack Nicholson's picture appears in that staff photo that hangs over the bar? as if he's another spirit that now haunts the Overlook Hotel. When I die in a tragic paranormal investigation accident, this is where I'm going to end up right here. We arm them, we fuel them, but you have to send them up to the flight deck to launch them, and they do that on really large elevators. And when we leave tonight, we'll walk off on one of those elevators. I'll show you that when we leave the ship tonight. But just to tell you, not all the spirits on the ship have two legs. Before the ship left Newport News, Virginia, some pilots had gone into town to get something to eat, and they ran into this stray dog. Yeah, they went to go get something to eat. They run into this dog. They look all over for the owners of the dog, can't find them. They decide in the end they're going to smuggle this dog on board the Yorktown in a trash can. So once on board, they call this dog Scrapper Scrapnel, or Scrappy for short. And the men love this dog. They just can't, they can't let the captain know there's a dog on board until the ship is well on its way to the Panama Canal. At that point, it's begging forgiveness, not asking permission. Okay? But sure enough, the captain's on the bridge and he hears this dog barking on the flight deck. He looks down. There's a 14-pound ball of fur running around with what looked like a custom-made life vest on. And he's furious. You know, he's pointing guys out left and right. Get your butt up here. Tell me what that dang dog is doing on my dang ship. The guys had to think up something quick, so they tell the captain that they named the dog after him, which is a lie, but it melts his icy heart. So now the Yorktown has a mascot for a little while. The dog is ultimately adopted by a family in the South Pacific because there's no place for a dog, right? The campers who stay in this area of the ship up here will hear barking in the early morning hours. They'll see a Wizard of Oz looking dog roaming the passageways of the Yorktown. If Scrappy's spirit exists on the Yorktown today, it's here for the same reason the spirits of the sailors are here. For a dog off the streets, this was heaven. All the boys could play with, all the scraps you could eat forever and ever. Right? What an adventure. You're gonna notice an acoustical change in this room. And you're going to notice that the seats are very comfortable. There's an ashtray in the arm of every chair because the pilots would spend a long time in here. They're getting their mission objectives. They're also getting their navigation instructions in here. They're flying using a watch and a compass. There's no roads to look at. There's no GPS. So a lot of this information is pretty extensive, and they carry that with them when they're flying, along with an airspeed calculator. It's like a circular slide rule is the best way I can describe it, and they need all that information while they're flying. So the room is soundproof because some of these missions are top secret. You don't want that information getting out here. The pilots, as for the pilots, I mean, they're coming from here up to their planes and taking off and going on the mission. So watch your step through here. We're just going to walk through.
Are they authentic or replicas?
These?
Yeah.
These are from, I think they were changed in the 60s.
So they didn't replace it.
Yep.
Is that TV from the 60s?
No, not a Samsung. That is a Japanese television set right there.
How ironic.
Are you coming all the way through here? Yeah. Okay. Hang on just a second. All right, guys, so this is CIC, the Combat Information Center, and the idea behind this room is to give you a 360-degree view of the battlefield. Now, that information comes in via radar and sonar on the right-hand side of the left-hand side of the room, is translated onto these clear glass panels by a guy on the other side of them so that the guys on the right-hand side of the room can read it, which means this guy's writing everything backwards. And he went to a special Navy school for 2 weeks to learn how to do that. And now these guys on the right-hand side of the room, they're in contact with the elements of the task force, ships, planes, and submarines, and they're moving them around according to the information they're getting over here. Okay? The lighting is so that we don't lose our night vision when we go up to the flight deck. You're doing a lot of stuff on the Yorktown at night under the cover of darkness. You're moving her around a lot, and there's no lights on the outside of this ship. This ship is an inky spot in the darkness. So when you go up to the flight deck, and if you're in here, you're going up to the flight deck a good bit. You don't have to adjust to the darkness up there. But we have one more ladder left, okay? But we're going over to the helicopter because there's an interesting story and a bizarre photograph somebody took. Oh, here I want to show you guys. This is our heavy lifter. The Sea King helicopter retrieves Apollo capsules and astronauts and can ferry pallets of equipment and supplies in wherever they're needed. And we had a young lady whose dad used to fly these back in, they've been flying these since 1960, and she wanted to get a picture of the inside of it. So she holds her phone up to the helicopter and takes this blind photo inside. And when she gets home and sees what she has, she immediately emails us. Let's see if you can see why. And I'll bring this right down the line. 1943, a bomber pilot comes on board the Yorktown. His name is Lieutenant Hummel, and Hummel's a good pilot. He can't find his way around the Yorktown to save his life. Literally, there's a complicated, not too complex, three-dimensional address system on the Yorktown. It tells you where you are precisely on this aircraft, from top to bottom, from front to back, and from side to side. And it just never clicked with him. So he's up on the flight deck one day for a mission that gets canceled because of weather. At that point, all the pilots are supposed to go back down to their ready rooms to see if they're going to do the mission again, if anything would change. He never reported back to his ready room. And that wasn't unusual. People just thought he was lost. They didn't report him missing for a week. They just thought he was wandering around the ship aimlessly. Turns out he disappeared that day, never to be seen again. Officially, he's one of the 141 casualties on board the Yorktown. Technically, he's missing in action today.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, if he did pass away, could his spirit be roaming around the flight deck looking for his bomber, which he'll never find up here? Or could he still be alive, roaming around the passageways of the Yorktown? I used to keep track of the accomplishments of the various air groups on the Yorktown. The flags are enemy aircraft shot down in the sky. The ducks are enemy aircraft shot on the ground. The ships with smoke coming out of them are ships that were hit but not sunk, and then actual sinking ships. All right? To be an ace pilot, and you hear that term used quite a bit if you watch old movies like I do. Ace pilots have to shoot down 5 enemy aircraft. That's what makes you an ace pilot. And some pilots don't do that their entire careers. Butch O'Hare, who they named O'Hare Airport after, was a Medal of Honor recipient and an ace pilot. He shot down 5 planes in 4 minutes, saving his entire aircraft carrier from Japanese bombers. That's why he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And he put himself in harm's way to do that. So, now, the Yorktown in 1953 changed jobs. She becomes anti-submarine warfare, which means that she gets a bunch of new jets. She gets all new electronics. And pilots at that time were growing increasingly burdened with gear, finding it harder and harder to make their way up to the flight deck on the ladder. So they added an escalator, and that's how we're getting down. Now, unfortunately, this escalator meets no current escalator safety standards whatsoever. So they've turned it off. But it's not a ladder. Right? So it's just a really long set of stairs. You guys follow me and we'll head down. This is the last thing I wanted to show you. This whole deck is one big elevator. Okay, behind you, that's just one big sliding garage door. So you open this up, you roll your planes out, they're armed, they're fueled, they're ready to go. Take about 43 seconds to get up to the flight deck. A modern aircraft carrier can do that in 3.5 seconds.
Oh.
Our modern aircraft carriers are incredible. They're 3 times the size of this, with Starbucks and Chili's on them. Guys, look, what I hope I've done tonight, I hope I've done 2 things. I hope I've inspired you to learn more about the Yorktown, learn more about stuff like this in your own hometown. We hardly ever, are tourists in our own hometowns. But those places like this in your hometown could probably use your support. I'd also like to think that when you go home tonight, wherever that is, that you find the scariest movie on TV you can find. You crawl into bed, you pull those covers up your chin, you watch that scary movie. Or play Bloody Mary. Turn out the lights and tell urban legends till you fall asleep and have nightmares. Now,
we're just walking off the ship now.
no, you guys are actual people. We see you.
We are?
That's a matter of opinion.
It's a matter of
So
opinion.
this is a big ask, and I know how big of an ask this is, but you guys can really help me out right now that the holidays are coming up. So you might get an email, you will get an email either tonight or next couple of days asking you to review the tour. If you like this tour, please tell my mother-in-law. It's so hard to impress this woman. I'm kind of in the outs with her right now anyway. So you know, a review that says something like, I wish I had a son-in-law like Tad. that would
hard for us to do considering our age.
Yeah, that's fine. She don't know. She don't know. My wife shows her my reviews. So, you know, if only every son-in-law was like Tad.
My dad's gun battery. Mind if I tell him?
Yeah.
I'm a Marine gunner. Right here where it says the R on the tail, about there was a gun battery. No longer there, of course, 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. There were 12 of them along the gun battery, March 18th to 45. And the kamikazes were coming up on the ship like wasps in a summer afternoon. And my dad, they see a Japanese, obviously Japanese kamikaze coming down, looks like a BB coming down off the aircraft. Well, it's a 500-pound bomb. And they get the kamikaze, but the bomb drops through here, below decks. Next thing you know, my dad comes to, and the ship is in gray, smoke, and the gun battery is, you know, this is 1-inch steel. Gun battery's in shambles. My dad's full of shrapnel. And 5 were killed that day, I think. 30 severely injured.
5,
my dad.
So, Powell Barnett?
You know the name Powell Barnett?
I tell that story.
Okay, that's my dad because
Oh,
the
cool.
evening of March 17th, so the night before that, March 17th, my dad was a bugler, how they do signals on the ship with bugles. And my dad was a gunner. But he had to teach another person, Powell Barnett, bugle calls on the fantail, the aft end of the ship, the night before. And the next day, Powell Barnett, both legs were off from the fins of the bomb, and my dad was tending to him. My dad was ordered down below. My dad, no, I'm going to help my brethren up here. And Powell Barnett said, give the IV to someone that needs it. So, heroism.
Wow.
Outstanding.
Yeah, these guys are all heroes. Carry on.
I've
Enjoy
got a
the
richer
ship,
story
guys.
to tell.
All right, have a great one.
All right, guys, that's concluding our visit to the Patriots Point Museum that is going to have the haunted experience.
USS Yorktown.
USS Yorktown.
A lot of history.
A lot of history. Not a lot of ghosts per se. Did you have an experience?
I did get my hair pulled just a little bit, only because we were in that dark room and I was by myself in a corner. Like, no one else was around me. So I was like a little scared about that. And I had the camera, so it was on me by myself.
I was by myself in the very, very back towards the hatch. In the pitch blackness, if no one had their cell phones on, it was black.
Whatever. We got to learn some history, and the best part for me was that guy that came through, like, just stopped by and was like, hey. And then he started talking about his dad, and we were like, oh my God, that's the guy that we heard the story about. So I thought that was so cool.
It's very cool having the personal
So special.
experiences like that.
Oh yeah. So special.
That's half the reason why we do it. To learn something new and meet people who have these experiences, and then you get to have general historical experiences, even when you're going on haunted stuff.
So we hope you found something. Let us know. We're gonna look through and we're gonna show y'all things that we might not have seen. We got some pictures. So that's exciting. I hope we get to hear something like we did in the first time we went to Yorktown together.
We're gonna definitely have that included.
Yes. So hit that like and subscribe and comment what you think, where we should go next to do something like this. Happy awnings.
See you guys.